10 days without screens. That is a challenge launched by an NGO here in France. From today until the 23rd of May, hundreds of daycare centres, preschools and high schools across the country will offer screen-free activities in an attempt to get us and our children off our smartphones and into the real world. Well, to talk about that interplay between screen time and our health, Julia Seeger's with me. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Nadia.
So, first of all, just how exposed are children to screens here in France?
Well, it's not surprising, but screen time keeps on increasing for kids here in France, just like everywhere else in the world. According to the latest figure, the average daily screen time for 2-year-olds here in France is of 56 minutes. It goes up for 3-year-olds to an hour and 20 minutes and a little over an hour and a half for 5-year-olds. Now, it's actually quite good compared to what we see elsewhere in the world, like in the United States, where the average screen time for kids is of 4 to 6 hours a day, and it can even go up to 9 hours a day for teenagers. Now, let it be in France or the United States, it still exceeds the recommendations of the WHO, which now recommends to completely ban screens for kids under the age of 2 and to limit to an hour a day for kids until the age of 5. And the reason why is that there are many risks, of course. One of them is cognitive development. That's in the short run. And then in the long run, of course, health issues, but also mental health issues. Now, if we look at cognitive development, scientists have found indeed that there is a decrease in the IQ of kids watching screens more, but it wasn't that significant. And what struck them is that they found that a lot of kids had delays in language development. And it was also very much linked to a certain context in which they were watching those screens. So, for instance, kids who are watching screens while eating or watching screens before going to school without ever interacting with their parents had 6 times more chances to have primary language disorders, which usually also means having to have follow-ups with speech therapists. So it's not too much the fact that there's long times spending in front of screens. It's the quality of the time that you have also with your kids. So your kids could be watching screens, but at the same time, if you interact with them, then you can also have great results when it comes to learning. Because what kids do is that they learn by imitating us, and they learn through a conversation. So you have to have this back and forth with the child. You can't learn just by watching videos. So this is really the issue. The issue is really passive listening, if you will, or just putting them on the side and not paying attention to them at all.
Right, and as you said, context is everything. So can children actually learn from
Actually,
videos?
we don't think they can learn at least until the age of 2. So they're going to be captivated by the screen. Of course, they're going to be watching it, but it doesn't mean that they can learn. We don't think that they can learn how to stack blocks by watching a video doing so. They need to be able to interact with the world, with the 3D world. They need to be able, on a cognitive perspective, for the brain to develop, they need to be able to use all of their senses. And the problem with screens is that you're experiencing the world in a two dimension, and you only use 2 different senses, of course, the sight and hearing.
And finally, Julia, are there risks then associated with the sedentary lifestyle that comes with the fact that lots of us children and adults are just looking at our screens a lot?
Yeah, we don't really think about that, but it is indeed very much linked to an increased risk of overweight and obesity, and it contributes to childhood obesity in a big way. There's also cardiovascular diseases in kids now because of screen time. So it's very much important. It also disrupts in a very big way their circadian cycle because of the blue light that the screen emits, and that's a huge problem because it can have many other issues, like, for instance, also affecting their growth. So as you can understand, it's really a complicated, multifaceted problem. One of maybe the last risk that I want to touch on is socialization, because what scientists have found also is that there's a preference for screens that kids develop with time over human interaction, and there's huge problems with being addicted to screens, of course. And the last message is, of course, they're sponges. They look at their parents, they imitate their parents. So we too have to make sure that we behave correctly, that we're not also glued to our screens constantly, because that's exactly what our kids are going to be doing.
All right, I agree with you, but easier said than done.
That's true, indeed.
Julia Seeger, first there, our science and health editor.